Okay, this is chapter 2 of the Dave Barry vampire story, called Decision. "How was school today?" inquired my father Pete, looking up from the newspaper as he sat at the kitchen table in our modest home where we lived together without my mother, who divorced my father and lives with her new husband in Florida and appears only sporadically as needed. "Fine," I responded non-committedly, as I removed the Swanson's Hungry Man chicken burrito from the oven and set it down. "Ouch," he retorted, because with my endearing clumsiness I'd set it on his forearm. "Sorry," I exclaimed in dismay. "Don't worry," he sighed with his usual stoic charm as a blister the size of a hockey puck appeared on his skin next to the 8-inch scar left from the time I made shish kebabs. "Listen," he continued, "you seem a little distracted today. Is there something wrong?" I hesitated. Pete is a chief of police in Creepstone, but he's not exactly Sherlock Holmes, if you catch my drift. He's so far failed to pick up on the fact that my boyfriend is a vampire who spends every night in my room, that my other boyfriend is a werewolf, and that Creepstone, not to mention the entire state of Washington, is teeming with violent, homicidal, supernatural creatures, about 60% of whom are trying to kill me personally. "No," I responded simply. "There's nothing wrong." Satisfied, Pete grunted and returned to his paper. Then, remembering something on his mind, he looked up again. "By the way," he intoned, "I want you to stay out of the woods." I gasped and dropped my fork, which penetrated about half-inch into Pete's foot. "Why?" I inquired forebodingly. "There's been some trouble," he expressed with a wince as he pulled the fork out and put it on the table out of my reach. "What kind of trouble?" I probed. "In the past 2 days, 158 hikers have been killed in the woods around Creepstone." "Killed?" I queried. I felt a cold feeling shoot through my veins like an intravenous slushy. "How?" I elaborated. "It's the darndest thing," marveled Pete. "All of them were violently dismembered, apparently by someone or something with incredible savage strength. Some of the victims' limbs were found as far as 2 football fields away from their bodies." I stared at him with a facial expression of shock. "But how?" I began, searching for the words to complete the question that was even then forming in my brain. "How did 2 football fields get into the woods?" Pete shook his head and shrugged, raising and lowering his shoulders to indicate he didn't know the answer. "That's got us stumped so far," he expressed ruefully. "Also, we can't figure out what's killing all those hikers. I mean, sure, we usually get 2 or 3 violent dismemberment hiker deaths a week around here. That's been going on for as long as anybody can remember. But 158 in 2 days seems like a lot. Doc Smelkins examined all the body pieces we were able to find, and he ruled out natural causes such as hookworm." "Then what could it be?" I persisted. "Right now we're working on a theory it could be a bobcat or a pack of unusually aggressive squirrels. But until we get this figured out, I don't want you going into the woods, okay?" I nodded pensively, thinking. First Stuart had warned me not to go in the woods. Then Phil had also mentioned something about the woods. What was it? The thought of Phil, I allowed myself a small smile of happiness due to the fact that he's so incredibly beautiful and perfectly chiseled, and yet he still chose me, with all my trademark quirks, over all the women in the world, including Angelina Jolie. But then my forehead puckered into a frown as I remembered that Phil had mentioned that Denise, the psychopathic vampire who was stalking me for the previous book, had been sighted recently in the woods. Could she have something to do with the 158 slain hikers? Should I mention any of this to Pete? With all these people being slaughtered and with him being responsible for the safety of the community, shouldn't I tell him about the imminent danger so he could protect himself and all the other innocent human lives being threatened? Nah. The more I thought about it, the more I knew what I had to do. I had to go out into the woods alone. It seemed crazy, like the plot of a bad horror movie where the teenage girl hears a scary noise in the basement, but instead of doing what anybody with an IQ higher than a chicken McNugget would do, namely sprint out of the house, she goes down to the basement. But I knew I had to do it because that's what I always do with my trademark stubbornness. I place myself in grave plot peril when there's no coherent reason to do so. Some people may call this ridiculous, but I'm guessing that some people have not sold 50 million books to date. "I'm tired," I informed Pete, yawning with my mouth for emphasis. "I think I'll go up to my room now." I leaned over to give Pete a goodnight kiss, only to trip forward with my trademark heartwarming clumsiness and headbutt him in the temple. He went down like a sack of gravel, out cold on the kitchen floor, eyes open, pupils dilated. I decided it was best to leave him there. I knew that he wouldn't do anything anyway. It was up to me. Only me. Me. Just then the doorbell rang, interrupting my thought process. I wondered who it could be and decided to find out by opening the door. Doing so, I saw Sven Lardstrom, a tall, blond, extremely handsome boy who's captain of the Creepstone High School football team and incredibly popular. He could have any girl he wanted. Oh no, I thought internally, knowing what was coming. I love you, he emoted. Sven, I sputtered. I can't. I know, he interrupted. You already have Phil and Stuart, but I don't care. I love you, and although I could have any girl I want, I will always love only you. If it makes a difference, in addition to being extremely attractive physically, I'm a member of the supernatural American community. You? I thought you were of Swedish descent. I am, he concurred, but the males in my family carry a terrible curse. When we're under great emotional stress, we turn into... Unable to complete the sentence, he looked downward toward the ground. Turn into what? I pressed. He raised his head and his piercing blue eyes bored into mine, though not literally. Zamboni machines, he blurted. No, I reacted in horror. Yes, he whispered hoarsely. We transform, then break into skating rinks and resurface them repeatedly, whether they need it or not. We can't stop ourselves. I thought it was just a myth, I intoned wonderingly. I wish, he regretted. I was afraid to ask the next question, but I could not stop myself because of my trademark inability to cease emitting dialogue. What if there's no ice rink around? I interrogated. Tears streamed from his handsome Nordic eyes as a look of shame crept across his chiseled face like a fast-moving caterpillar of emotion. We'll do frozen ponds or even driveways, he sobbed ashamedly. Any reasonably leveled, ice-covered surface. He put his head in his hands, sobbing. He had really nice hair. Sven, I commiserated, touching his shoulder with my hand. He was muscular like Phil and Stuart. One thing about those attractive male supernatural beings, in addition to being crazy about me, they're in excellent physical condition. It's not your fault, I added. You can't help being what you are, I added further. Feeling the touch of my hand touching him, Sven raised his head and he looked at me with an expression that I had seen before in the past. Not again, I reflected mentally. Marry me, he urged. Sven, I sighed. I can't. I will make you happy, he broke in persistently. I will love you and worship you forever, and as God is my witness, you will never again have to contend with bumpy or pitted ice. It was very tempting, but I knew from previous experience with supernatural hunks who found me irresistible, that if I led Sven on, if I gave him even the slightest reason to hope that he could have me, I would only break his heart and probably place him in mortal danger of being killed. I knew I had to make it completely, undeniably clear to him that he had absolutely no chance or his life would be ruined and it would all be my fault. Maybe, I declared. Really? He exclaimed, his eyes lighting up with joy like twin blue spherical orbs equipped with some kind of internal illumination. Yes, I allowed. Then with my trademark unbelievably annoying emotional incoherence, I added, no. A look of confusion settled on Sven's perfectly chiseled Slavic cheekbones, unless I'm thinking of Nordic. I'm pretty sure it's one of those. Wait a minute, he puzzled. I'm not sure whether you're saying yes or no or maybe. I am, I affirmed. You are what? He pressed. Yes, I clarified. What? He chagrined. Before I could answer, I felt a jolt as I suddenly remembered something. The main storyline. Somehow I had to get back to it. I'm sorry, Sven, I apologized. I'm about to get myself into grave plot peril, so I have to go. But, he commenced. Maybe next book, I curtailed, closing the door in his perfectly chiseled Slavic, or Nordic, I should look this up by the time I get this published, features. Through the door I heard a wail, followed by groans of pain, followed by clanking, followed by a motor starting, followed by a whooshing sound of the sidewalk ice being resurfaced in an emotional manner. But I had no time to think about Sven. Right now I had to think about how anguished I was with all those powerful feelings swirling around inside of me like a smoothie being blended from a variety of emotional fruits as I stepped over Pete's body, nearly losing my footing in his drool puddle, as I prepared to go out into the woods with nothing to protect myself except my various attractive supernatural boyfriends. I did not know what the peril I was about to face. All I knew was one thing, and the most important thing of all. Whatever happened, it would involve me.